the whisper beneath the earth. There are places that ancient people feared to name aloud, not because they doubted their existence, but because they believed uttering the name might draw its attention. For the Sumerians, that place was Kur, the underworld. They imagined it not as a fiery pit of punishment, but as a shadowed, dusty realm where all souls, kings and beggars alike, eventually walked. And at the very heart of that realm was a city with gates so heavily guarded, so eternally sealed, that not even the gods entered without consequence. Its name was Ganzir, but there was one who dared. Inanna, the queen of heaven and earth, who ruled over love, fertility, and war, chose to cross the boundary no living being had crossed willingly. Why she went remains one of the great puzzles of Sumerian myth. Was it pride, curiosity, a political mission disguised as a divine act? Or was there a truth, buried under layers of myth, about a journey into a hidden realm that once existed beneath the cities of Sumer? The Sumerians left us fragments of the story, etched into clay over 4,000 years ago. But these fragments are more than poetry. They are a map, a symbolic one, perhaps, but a map nonetheless. And if we read it carefully, we may find that the gates of Ganzir were not only real, but inspired by something deep beneath the Mesopotamian world. Could the story of Inanna's descent be more than a myth? Could these 7 gates still be waiting somewhere beneath the sands, their secrets locked away for millennia? And if someone found them, what would they discover on the other side? The call to the underworld. The earliest tablets tell us Inanna did not descend without preparation. She dressed in her royal regalia, a crown upon her head, lapis beads around her neck, and the shimmering the divine powers, woven into her garments. In her hands, she carried symbols of authority, the rod and the line, tools said to measure the boundaries between worlds. Her destination was the domain of her sister, Ereshkigal, queen of the underworld, a goddess feared even among the divine. Between them lay not just distance, but a threshold no one crossed without paying a price. To reach Ereshkigal's throne, Inanna would need to pass through 7 gates, each guarded by a sentinel who obeyed only the strict laws of the dead. But why did Inanna go at all? Some versions say she sought to extend her power, challenging her sister's rule. Others hint at a deeper, more personal reason: the funeral rites for Ereshkigal's husband, the bull of heaven, whose death Inanna may have caused. Was this a journey of reconciliation or confrontation? And what did the Sumerians mean by 7 gates? Were they merely spiritual stages, or a description of real-world barriers, a subterranean descent through layers of earth, stone, and ritual chambers that could have existed beneath their cities? Archaeologists have uncovered stepwells, vaulted tunnels, and deep crypts beneath Mesopotamian ruins. Could these be the remnants of the path Inanna was said to take? As she stepped toward the first gate, Inanna was not only crossing a physical threshold, but entering a realm where her power would be tested and stripped away, piece by piece. But what exactly lay beyond that first gate, and what was waiting for her in the darkness below? The first 3 gates. The first gate of Ganzir was not made to impress, but to humble. The guardian, following the laws of the underworld, demanded Inanna remove her crown before entering. In Sumerian thought, the crown was more than ornament. It was the visible sign of kingship and divine authority. Removing it was not only an act of surrender, but a symbolic decapitation of status. Some scholars believe this imagery mirrors an actual ritual of descent, practiced by Sumerian priestesses, where sacred objects were left at each stage of a temple's inner chambers. Others suspect these gates could have been real, a series of increasingly narrow, fortified passages leading deeper into an underground structure. Could these gates have once stood inside the foundation of a ziggurat or beneath a hidden crypt? The second gate awaited her with equal severity. Here, the lapis beads around her neck, a symbol of divine favor and celestial connection, were taken away. Lapis lazuli, rare and imported from far-off Afghanistan, was among the most treasured stones in Mesopotamia. To strip it away was to sever Inanna's link to the heavens themselves. At the third gate, she gave up the rod and line, the measuring tools of the gods. In practical terms, these were symbols of order, law, and the power to shape the boundaries of both cities and the cosmos. Without them, she was no longer a ruler, but a wanderer, stripped of the right to define the world around her. 3 gates down, 4 remained. But each step deeper was more than physical. It was a shedding of identity, the dismantling of everything she had been. If this journey reflected an ancient rite of passage, what lay at its conclusion? Was it simply mythic death and rebirth, or a secret chamber where only the initiated could tread? And if the gates truly existed in stone, how deep into the earth did they lead? The final gates of surrender. At the 4th gate, Inanna was ordered to remove the golden breastplate upon her chest. In the mythology, it represented protection, both physical and spiritual. Without it, she stood exposed, her heart vulnerable. Some historians draw parallels to Mesopotamian burial customs, where warriors and nobles were sometimes interred without their armor, symbolizing their surrender to the afterlife. Could this stage of the myth be echoing an ancient funerary rite, one known only to the elite? The 5th gate took the golden ring from her wrist, a seal of contracts and a mark of divine pact. To remove it was to erase her authority to command or bargain. The symbolism here was stark. In the underworld, no agreements could be made, no decrees enforced. Was this a warning that power among the living meant nothing below, or did it reflect the real dangers faced by those who entered forbidden subterranean sanctuaries, where the rules of the upper world did not apply? At the 6th gate, she relinquished her ankle ornaments, delicate but potent symbols of movement and freedom. Without them, the goddess who had once roamed between heaven and earth now moved like any other soul of the dead, bound by the slow, unchanging pace of the underworld. And at the 7th gate, the final barrier, came the most complete act of surrender. Inanna was stripped of her robe, the last layer of her dignity, identity, and divine aura. Naked and powerless, she stood before the court of Ereshkigal. For the Sumerians, this was the moment of absolute equality in death, the point where all status, beauty, and authority were gone, leaving only the soul. But what if this wasn't just symbolic? Could the removal of these items have been part of a physical, step-by-step initiation deep within an ancient structure, where each chamber demanded the surrender of something tangible before moving further? And if such a ritual was real, where did it end? And what was truly waiting beyond the last gate? The throne of Ereshkigal. Beyond the 7th gate lay a chamber unlike any Inanna had known. Silent, air heavy as if pressed by the weight of the earth itself. Here sat Ereshkigal, the queen of the underworld, her presence described in the tablets with words that feel both poetic and unsettling. Her gaze was the gaze of death, her voice a storm in the bones. In the myth, there is no grand welcome, no embrace of sisters, only judgment. Ereshkigal fixes her eyes on Inanna, stripped of crown, jewels, and robe, and the verdict is swift. The eye of death falls upon her. The word of wrath is spoken. The cry of guilt is uttered. And with that, Inanna's life is taken. Her body is hung upon a hook, left to decay. To modern ears, this sounds purely symbolic, the goddess brought to the absolute limit of humiliation and powerlessness. Yet, ancient scholars argue that the hook may reference something more literal. In royal burials at Uruk, bodies were sometimes arranged in positions that suggested suspension or ritual display before final entombment. Could the hook be a metaphor for a final chamber where the initiate's body, or effigy, remained, marking the symbolic death before rebirth? Here, the myth also takes on a psychological dimension. Some believe this scene encodes an ancient understanding of transformation. The ego must die before one can be remade. The stripping at each gate and the suspension in darkness mirror shamanic traditions worldwide, where initiates undergo simulated death to return with new insight. But there's another possibility, one that blurs the line between ritual and reality. What if the throne of Ereshkigal was an actual subterranean chamber, the deepest point in a network beneath the cities? Some archaeologists speculate that certain temple complexes might have extended downwards, not just upwards, forming inverted ziggurats that descended into the ground. Could the underworld have been one of these, an architectural marvel hidden from the public, reserved for the most sacred or dangerous rites? And if so, what exactly happened in that chamber once the final gate was closed behind you? Was it merely a performance of divine myth or something far stranger, something the Sumerians dared not describe openly? The rescue and the bargain. For 3 days and 3 nights, Inanna hung lifeless in the underworld. In Sumerian timekeeping, this was not just a span of hours, it was a symbolic threshold. 3 was the number of completion, of endings before a new beginning. Her absence did not go unnoticed. In the myth, it is the god Enki, the keeper of wisdom and hidden knowledge, who intervenes. Upon hearing of Inanna's fate, he fashions 2 tiny, sexless beings from the dirt beneath his fingernails, the Galatura and Kurjara. These creatures, too small to be seen, are sent into the underworld carrying the food and water of life. They mimic Ereshkigal's cries, share in her pain, and in gratitude, she offers them a gift, any gift they choose. They ask for Inanna's corpse. With a touch of the food and water of life, Inanna is restored. But restoration in the Sumerian underworld comes at a cost. The law was clear. No one leaves Ganzir without sending another soul in their place. Thus begins one of the oldest recorded bargains with death. When Inanna returns to the world of the living, she seeks someone to take her place. She passes through the cities where people mourn her absence, except for her consort, Dumuzi. He sits on her throne, dressed in finery, showing no grief. Inanna's gaze hardens, and she decrees that he will be the one to descend in her stead. Yet even here, the myth reveals a deeper pattern. Dumuzi's descent is not permanent. He will spend half the year in the underworld, while his sister Geshtinanna takes the other half. This cycle, death and return, mirrors the changing seasons, the withering of crops in the heat, and their revival after the rains. Was this part of the myth an encoded agricultural calendar, teaching farmers when to sow and when to harvest? Or could it be something else entirely? The alternating descent of Dumuzi and Geshtinanna feels strikingly similar to astronomical cycles, the shifting dominance of certain constellations in the night sky. Could the gates of Ganzir have been both a spiritual journey and a star map, leading not just beneath the earth, but into the heavens themselves? And if the myth holds both meanings, which was the original, the earthly right or the celestial code? The realm of Ganzir. In Sumerian texts, the underworld was not a place of flames and torment, but of dust and silence. The dead were described as eating clay and drinking muddy water, clothed in feathers like birds. The realm itself, Kur, was thought to be deep beneath the earth, far removed from the light of Utu, the sun god. At its center stood Ganzir, both palace and prison, guarded by Neti, the chief gatekeeper. The city was imagined with walls of bronze and a river encircling it, the river of death, that no soul could cross without permission. Every gate was bound by law, and no god or mortal could pass without surrendering something of themselves. What's striking is how consistent these images are with actual architectural features of early Mesopotamian sites. Archaeologists have uncovered temple complexes with multiple entry chambers, each guarded or marked by thresholds. In Uruk and Eridu, certain sacred spaces were deliberately placed underground, cool, dark rooms accessible only by narrow stairways, as if intentionally designed to evoke another world. Could Ganzir have been inspired by one of these hidden chambers? Perhaps the myth took root from a real location, a ceremonial site where only the highest priestesses and kings could enter. Some even suggest it may have been connected to the royal tombs of where grave goods, guards, and musicians were buried alongside the ruler, creating a silent court that mirrored the living one above. And then there's the question of the river of death. Was this a symbolic boundary, or could it have been an actual underground waterway? The Euphrates and Tigris often shifted their courses, carving hidden channels beneath the land. Did the Sumerians know of such subterranean rivers and incorporate them into their vision of the underworld? If the myth of Ganzir was rooted in a real place, it raises a tantalizing possibility. Could there still be undiscovered chambers beneath Mesopotamian ruins, sealed for millennia, holding the artifacts or the echoes of these ancient rites? And if so, what would we find if one of those gates were opened today? Death, rebirth, and the hidden pattern. Inanna's descent is, on the surface, a tale of loss and restoration. Yet beneath the poetry lies a structure, a sequence of symbolic acts repeated in countless cultures across the ancient world. Death, stripping away, judgment, and eventual return. It is a rhythm as old as human memory. For the Sumerians, this cycle was more than philosophy. It was the very pattern of existence. Crops wither, rivers dry, the land sleeps. Then, with the rains and floods, life returns. The descent of Inanna and the alternating presence of Dumuzi in the underworld embodied this endless turning of the seasons. But it also touched something more intimate, the human fear of death and the hope that something waits beyond it. What's intriguing is how closely this mirrors the myths of distant civilizations. The Egyptians told of Osiris, slain and restored, ruling the land of the dead. The Greeks spoke of Persephone, taken to the underworld each winter and returning each spring. Even in far-off Mesoamerica, there are echoes in the journeys of gods to shadowed realms and back. Were these shared ideas a coincidence? Or could they be remnants of a far older, perhaps prehistoric spiritual system that spread across the world? Inanna's stripping at each gate also aligns with initiation rites found in shamanic traditions. The removal of worldly possessions, the symbolic death of the initiate, followed by a return marked by new powers or insight. To the Sumerians, this transformation may have been both religious and practical, a way to prepare leaders for the heavy weight of rule by reminding them that power is temporary, and all must bow to the laws of the unseen. But here lies the deeper mystery. If these rites were real, who decided when they ended? Was the return guaranteed? Or did some never emerge from the final gate? And if the myths are preserving the memory of such trials, how much of what we call myth might once have been cold, lived reality? Searching for the gates. If Ganzir was more than a poetic invention, where would its gates have stood? The myths give only symbolic coordinates, beneath the great mountains, where the rivers meet, past the house whose entrance is dust and whose exit is clay. To the Sumerians, these phrases had meaning. To us, they sound like riddles carved in time. Some archaeologists look to Eridu, the oldest known city in Sumer, where the Temple of Enki was rebuilt layer upon layer for thousands of years. Beneath its foundations lie chambers and passages, some still unexcavated. Could one of these layers conceal an entrance designed to resemble the first gate of the underworld? Others point to Ur, with its sprawling royal cemetery. Here, deep shafts lead to burial chambers filled with treasures, attendants, and ritual objects. The arrangement of some of these tombs, narrow corridors, sequential chambers, and guarded thresholds, bears an uncanny resemblance to the journey described in Inanna's descent. If the underworld was modeled on a royal tomb, or vice versa, then the gates of Ganzir may already have been found, but their true meaning never recognized. And then there are the more speculative theories. A few researchers have noted that the ziggurats, the towering temples of Sumer, may have been mirrored below ground, inverted ziggurats descending into the earth. If true, then the 7 gates could have been 7 subterranean terraces, each demanding a symbolic surrender before entry to the deepest point. Yet, despite decades of excavation, no definitive gate of Ganzir has been uncovered. This absence only deepens the allure. Was it deliberately hidden, known only to a select priesthood who took its location to their graves? Or could it be that Ganzir exists not in one place, but in many? A concept recreated in multiple cities, each with its own gates for the chosen to pass through. If somewhere, beneath the ruins of a Mesopotamian city, a sealed chamber still waits, could it hold the artifacts, or even the inscriptions, that prove the myth was once a living ritual? And if we found them, would opening those gates be an act of discovery or of trespass? The descent remembered Inanna's journey through the gates of Ganzir is one of the oldest stories ever written. A tale carved in clay long before the pyramids rose or the Greek epics were sung. On its surface, it is a divine drama, a goddess descending, stripped of her power, facing judgment, dying, and returning. But in its layers, it is a map of the Sumerian mind, a worldview in which life and death, earth and sky, mortal and divine, were all threads in the same endless weave.
Whether Ganzir was ever a physical place, its power lies in the way it bridges the visible and the unseen. It tells us that even the highest must bow to the laws of the underworld, that every journey into the depths
changes the one who returns, and that nothing, not crowns, not jewels, not even divine authority, follows us beyond the final gate. For the archaeologist, the story tempts with whispers of hidden architecture, secret chambers, and rituals performed in places we have yet to uncover. For the historian, it is a record of belief, one that shaped how an entire civilization viewed the cycles of nature, the movements of the stars, and the fate of the soul. And for the listener, it remains a mystery, one that feels both ancient and strangely personal. Perhaps the gates of Ganzir were real. Perhaps they were never made of stone or bronze, but of moments and trials each of us must face. The Sumerians believed that the descent was inevitable, that at some point, every life passes through its own 7 gates, surrendering all until nothing remains but the essence of who we are. And yet, like Inanna, we return, changed, marked, carrying the memory of the journey, whether in myth, in history, or in the unspoken corners of our own lives. The sands of Mesopotamia still hide countless secrets. Somewhere, beneath the ruins, the silence of the underworld may still wait. And if we ever stand before those gates, will we have the courage to step through? Or will we turn back, leaving Ganzir to remain, as it has for 5,000 years, a realm half in darkness and half in dream? Stay connected for the next Sumerian episode with Nexora.